So, hi, good afternoon. My name is Artur Goulão. I'm a CTO and co-founder of UTRUST. UTRUST, just to give you a little bit of origin, and it's actually the motivation behind this talk. So, UTRUST is a crypto-to-cash payment platform. So, it's the child of an ICO here in Switzerland, and we aim to be one of the biggest players in the payments area in crypto. So just a quick overview of what we are. We offer buyer protection, fluctuation protection, so buyer protection on the buyer's front, fluctuation protection on the merchant front, so the merchant never touches the crypto, so there's no volatility here, and low fee. We only charge 1% per transaction. So we have the benefits and we have the risks. And this is something that came about, and one of the biggest challenges in UTRUST is actually the regulatory part, not only with the regulators, but the whole, how the system can manage change in the regulation. So right now we are assisting a lot of regulators in different type of countries. We already talked with the FINMA here in Switzerland, CMVM in Portugal, AMF in Canada, and this is something that they are aiming to change. And there has been between 2 and 2 months new updates to the whole regulatory area of the crypto itself, and then on the payment side of the crypto, because there are a lot of uncertainty, and this is actually the coolest part of UTRUST right now, is how can we manage a system that can be resilient to changes in the regulatory part. So the problem, what if the regulation changes? So I will give you an example, PSD2 and know your customer limits. It depends on the geography. We have standards document in the European Union, but each country regulates what he sees fit. This is not a business logic change. In no part, know your customer is a part of the business logic in the system. So it's not a change on the business logic. If we change something on the regulatory part or on the rules that supervise the system, what does this affect in the system? What are the impacts? After this change, is the system still auditable? Can I go through past, in case of UTRUST, past transactions, and they will still be valid within the system? So there are a lot of questions that once we started developing the product and working with regulators came about. So it's not only that crypto is fast-paced, is also the regulators are getting fast-paced. So is this a legal issue? So the mission of compliance is to ensure that the system reflects the current regulation and can mitigate risk. Risk is important to be mitigated, especially in case of high volatility markets. But we have changes when the product is running. So let me just put you in perspective with the PSD2. PSD2 in some European countries was ratified in October. So this is, from our development cycle, this is a lot of time after our product began development. So this is a problem. So 9 months after, we have a problem that we didn't know, because we never know if the country will ratify it as is from the main European document, or it will introduce changes. So it's unpredictable. It needs to produce deliverables that can ensure regulation compliance, meaning that we need to make documentation or making mechanisms within the system that can be verifiable and that can be auditable by external sources. And I'm not talking only about blockchain transactions. I'm also talking about off-chain transactions. What happens if an article in law or a directive changes? So the impact of a law and directive might not be direct related with the business itself, as we as seen in the PSD2 example. So if it's a limit, it's not within the boundaries of the business. It's within the boundaries of the supervision of the business. And if I make some changes within the system to onboard these new regulations or these new directives, can I see before deployment if those changes affect any other part of the business rules? And on the case of the legal part, is this automatable and auditable? So automatable here is that, can I create some system that can look into regulatory documents, text-based documents, and can I output code? And is this code auditable? Meaning that, does this code actually do what the regulatory documents propose? Let's see it on the other side. Is this a tech issue? So a tech mission is just, this is the business model that I want. Let me put this on technology. And being an online or offline system doesn't matter. It's automation of a business proposition. Now, I'm a CTO, so now I need to know legal subjects. Does this even matter in my case? Can I just NLP all the documents and see if some directives can be translated into code? But is the system suffering these changes secure and tamper-proof? Does this directive insert new business, either restrictions or new business features, for example? And again, can I sandbox these new changes to NDAC in order for the developers and the Q&A team to see how it affects the system? And again, it's the same question. Is it automatable and auditable from a tech perspective? So as an example from the whole regulatory scheme, from the legislation until the implementation, we have a really long pipeline and a lot of uncertainty between them. One of the insertions that we at UTRUST saw fit is that now we need to have legal engineers. Legal engineers are those that will look at regulation and will see, okay, my system needs to implement this set of rules that are not business rules, are constraints over what the system can and cannot do. So can I do this as a smart contract? Can I do this as a storage procedure? What can I do? And as an example, I put the open banking standard that I see that is the more familiar piece of technology that most of fintechs know about. So the open banking standard is basically, let's just look at the regulation and let's just create a standard that is a reflection of that regulation. But this is not a system, it's a standard. So as a standard, it doesn't know how to handle changes, doesn't know how to handle a lot of those impacts that even the small change can create havoc in another part of the system. So can it be framed as a complex system? So we have here like a dependent norm that depends on a top-level norm. And it said that is the initial state. And now we insert a new rule. This new rule is a new top-level norm, but has new constraints over existing dependent norms. So now we have dependent norms depending on two top levels. And this can just be simple regulation stating that now I need to do know your customer for individuals or merchants that can only spend by themselves without doing the know your customer 150 euros. So this is new. This is not business. And as a typical demonstration of what is a complex system, it features a large number of interacting components. And that's the most critical part. So we are not only about talking about fintech. Fintech is transactions, processing, reversals. Now we are talking about supervising. So are those transactions legal? Are those transactions within rules of the geography? Because they can be legal in Switzerland, Germany, but they might not be in the UK. These are types of interactions that are atypical and are not linear. You cannot predict. So, talking about Legaltech, is legal codeable? And let's think a bit about what is legal and taking a look about how the regulatory bodies implement and draft the regulations. Most laws and directives are actually deterministic. So it's a process or a goal oriented. So they can be implemented in code if it's deterministic. And for those that are not, they can have a legal engineer that can translate that. And that's the I don't know, 20% that are not easily computable. We can implement NLP, like this is already happening from 10 years now, and some will be actually translated and computable directly. No need for new human intervention. And we can have a smart contract system that can evolve with the regulation. This is something that's new and that I think the key point on the whole phenomenon of blockchain can actually bring to the table. So now I can have a system that supervises another system that can be auditable, can be evolve. You can evolve a smart contract, and you can sandbox it. So you can actually see what the changes are and what is the impact. So let's, as an example, we got the release of AML5, and looking at Article 12, because it's the simplest one, so it has a lot of keywords that can be used for the computation of the whole meaning. We have derogation that it's an exception, basically. And you have terms for those exceptions. So if we are looking at a regulatory document, if we highlight or compute those keywords, eventually there are some results. So this is the first and initially derogative points from the previous, the AML4. So they derogate A, B, C, and D. So, but they derogate, so there might be a general rule or a default rule. So, yeah, because you need to do due diligence for every customer that onboards your system. You need to identify the typical know your customer. You need to identify the beneficial owner of the funds. It might not be the same person that is onboarding. As an example, it might be a secretary doing the onboarding on a payment gateway, but the beneficial owner is the owner of the company, as an example. And you need to obtain information of the purpose of doing that. So this is the basic rule, the whole set of rules. The other ones are just the exceptions or the caveats that from now you are reducing 250 euros to 150 euros. So these are manageable and computable. So as an example, we can go from left to right. We are going to formal, written, and code. We can translate that using, in my humble opinion, NLP to translate that within the substance and the content. Let's go with terms and conditions. So terms and conditions are a good example because they are determined. So it's a very type of document that is the boundaries are sealed. So they have a couple of loose points, of course, but most of the document is sealed. And now you pass from the legal side, you already computed, and now you pass that to what is called the central database. As an example, it could be a land registration in this case, but continuing on the finance part, you can either implement that on blockchain with smart contracts, but there's actually no need. You can implement that with SQL databases with storage procedures, and they are executable. So you came from now I have this set of rules on paper to I have a smart contract that will trigger when this transaction will pass through. So it will verify if this transaction and the transaction system is implemented elsewhere, but will verify if that transaction it's really compliant with those set of rules. So, and the final result, it could be a settlement, a financial compensation, a digital output. You can buy an MP3 or a video. So this is something that most of the computational challenges right now we are having at UTRUST. That is the translation from the regulatory and the whole changing. We are looking at 3 different geographies. And the pipeline is basically this. We go to the whole written statements. We try and translate that into actual code that will supervise the transactions, and then create a set of smart contracts and the whole pipeline then those transactions will go through. This might not be the same system, might be an accessory. In our case, it's still embryonic, so it's an auxiliary system. But the importance in this is that you can evolve without impacting the business rules. It's really separated, and you can introduce new elements. And because this is technology we are talking about, you can implement the same vision that you do for the development team. So there are new challenges. It's got cut out at the bottom. So think of a complex system as this is really a complex system. It's not just a monolithic one or a bunch of microservices. It's not. There are two distinct teams that are code-driven. You have the development team and the legal team. Law code needs review. This is the most fascinating one. Now there's applicability for formal methods outside of verifying that if a satellite software is correct. Now there's a regulatory need to verify that code. You have a revision, but it's code, so a Git will do. Everything is auditable and resilient, so it's a blockchain or an Hyperledger, so it's auditable. And now I have a sandbox, and I can measure the impact. Will I get a performance penalty if I implement this type of regulatory right now? Or will I need to change a business rule because the implementation of these new regulatory rules will decrease my revenue? So now it's something that we can actually predict. Changes in the law can be predicted within the system. And this is something that, as a CTO, it's something that it was really wonderful to discover within UTRUST, because legal, it's now being part of tech and the whole tech team. It's not just an outsider doing boring work and everyone is looking at them, seeing that, oh, there are those guys that are grumpy. No, now even the tech team now understands the importance, because if there's some change, they need to see what is the impact, so they can create mechanisms to create agility within the development team to implement at the same time. Because as we see with the GDPR or PSD2 and eventually ML5, there are specific dates for those to be implemented. So it's not something that we can, okay, we will see. So yeah, I hope that it was as a pleasure to hear, it was for me a pleasure to talk. If you have any questions. Sure.
I'll be quick. I've got 3 questions, all related. I am a lawyer, so I'm asking with the view that I like commoditization of law and I like legal tech. Who are your engineers, your legal engineers? How do you deal with the fact that as soon as you translate or compute law, you're giving legal advice? So you need to be part of a regulated profession or a body, and it's bound to make mistakes. How do you deal with liability?
So the first question, legal engineers are either software developers that, well, started tackling regulatory problems, actual lawyers or jurists, as we say in Portugal, that started to learning technology, or people that are coming from a type of masters that's called law and informatics. It's really recent. I think it has like 5 years throughout Europe. And those are the main legal engineers. So we have both parts on the tech side, the legal side that can see and can understand regulatory and can understand technology. What was the second question?
So as soon as you translate any law
yeah.
or compute it, you're giving legal advice, because you're not just repeating what the law is, you're interpreting.
No. Right now we are, as this is very embryonic, everything is being reviewed by some legal entity that can say, okay, this is correct. So because we are using learning systems, and we need to fine tune them.
Yeah.
And the third one is that if there's some thing that might not go as well, this is something that we will take this risk. So we will document that this has happened. Imagine a transaction of €1,000 that went through without KYC. We will just assume that. And as we are in close talks with regulators, and we are showing them the whole work that we are doing, I think that this is something that eventually we can minimize. I don't think that any system will be perfect, but we will minimize. And as I said in the beginning, 20% will actually need human intervention. So I think that the more, boring directives or laws will be automated, and the more complex or dependent on context, there will be direct human intervention.